That's really tough. Yeah. I know. Yeah. No, I know. All right, what do we got? We have, oh, I,
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Connie Bennett, and this is Bill Wisniewski, and we are co-chairs of Friends of Ravenna Schools. We'd like to welcome you tonight to our community meeting, and we are going to have two presentations this evening with two very special invited guests this evening as well, and that is going to be Kristen Plageman, our treasurer from Ravenna School District. She'll be speaking first, and Mr. Ben Reiblin, our superintendent, and they will be speaking on the financial operations of the school and the state of the schools. So we're looking forward to their presentation. In advance of this meeting, we did ask the public for questions. So Ben and Kristen have woven those questions into their presentation. If we weren't able to do that, we are going to have a question and answer session at the end. You have also been given the opportunity to fill out a note card this evening with questions, so we're going to answer those as well. And you may just have a question based on what you hear tonight, and we'll try to get all of those questions answered. In the event, at the question and answer period, we run out of time, we will get all of those questions answered, share that with you on our social media pages, as well as email if you've shared that when you checked in. If you'd like to share your email, you can also do that on the way out. In addition to that, the other thing that we have done is all of you had received a postcard when you walked in. It has all of our school levy information on it. There's also a QR code there. And if you click on that QR code, it will take you to the Friends of Ravenna School website. There you can email us. You can get all information on the school levy. You can volunteer to help our organization, which we would love for you to do. You can ask for a yard sign. Anything that you'd like to obtain on that website, you can get information on the school levy. You can also provide your email address there as well, and again, stay informed on everything school levy related. At this time, I would like to share with you that this is being live streamed. So it's going to be live streamed at Ravenna YouTube, and it'll also be recorded. So you'll have the opportunity, if you want to talk to friends and family, we'd love for you to get this information out on our behalf so that other people can hear this very important presentation. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Bill Wisniewski, and Bill is going to introduce our first speaker.
First of all, once again, thank you everyone for being here. Your presence means so much to us, so thank you so much. And thank you for Connie for leading us into the introduction. One thing that the committee thought about, and what we'd like to do is, as you see the presentation, Kristen's name is on there, but we'd like to take some time to tell a little bit of a story of each of our presenters. So Kristen was hired. This is her first year as a treasurer for Ravenna School District. Kristen received her treasurer's license through Ohio Association of School Business Officials. And one of the things that we found that the board part in hiring her is that Kristen has experience, and we'd like to share some of it. Kristen had many years with the Parma School District, 13 years in administrative capacity. She talked about in her presentation who she is, her comprehensive career, which she's done, and so much of what she has done is with children. Not only will we hear about her, but so much of what she's done is with children and also in compliance with financing. So so much of what she's been able to do is she's worked with programming with children. She's worked with disadvantaged children in the different districts she's been in. But what she comes into us is her background in finance. She has a background in curriculum, policy, leadership. So she brings those with us. But it's also interesting to hear that Kristen, our presenter, in a school realm, she has many licenses. So we look upon the person who's presenting today, she's got a treasurer's certificate. She also carries a superintendent certificate. She carries the business manager's training and certificate. She has education and administration background, working with children with special education. And I think the biggest thing we can hear is she will present to us the financial aspect, but I think what we're gifted to have is a person who understands children. She knows what it's like she's had years in the classroom. So she brings the administrative aspect to her job with the district, but also we respect who she is as a person. She continues to live in the area, And we just share, Kristen has 3 grown children who reside in Ohio. So we'd like to welcome Kristen to make her presentation on the finances of our school district.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Bill. So first of all, I provided a QR code. Sometimes my eyesight isn't the best, and if you wanted to scan it on your phone, you were given QR codes when you came in, or you can do it right here, so if you wanted to follow along with any of my presentation. Let's see. I guess I need the clicker. All right, so first of all, there's a couple concepts that I'm going to be covering this evening. It's only 14 slides, so give you that warning ahead of time. So we're going to talk about the 5-year forecast. We're going to talk about what is comprised in the 5-year forecast, our expenditures and our revenues. We're going to talk about fiscal oversight. I'm going to give you some scenarios with the governor's budget reduction plan. I'm going to give you some scenarios with also passage of a levy for the district. I do want to make note that my spring forecasts that are going to be labeled April 2025 are in draft form. We're in March. So those forecasts, whatever we're going with, will need to be board approved on April 15th. Additionally, my data is as of today, as of March 18th. As many of you have heard in the news, there's many changes that are being proposed to state funding. So my data is as of today, so there will be maybe some changes in the future. So our spring forecasts are going to be based upon the governor's budget's initial proposals, and we will not have any finalized governor's budget until June 30th of 2025. Oh my goodness, that looks small. All right, so let's talk about the document that kind of drives my operations, drives the district operation. It's called a 5-year forecast. The 5-year forecast is a prediction tool. It takes the past, the current year, and 4 years forward so that we can actually make a financial plan for the district on our revenues coming in and our expenditures going out. It's a communication tool from my department to the Board of Education. It's a communication tool for Ravenna School District to our community. It's also a communication tool to ODEW and the State Auditor's Office. It's used in the State Auditor's Office and ODEW if our revenues are not, if our expenditures are exceeding our revenues, or if we don't end the year with a positive fund balance. That then causes your fiscal oversight. So there's multiple purposes that we use for the 5-year forecast. Again, it specifically outlays what our revenues coming in and what our expenditures are coming out. All right. So in May of 2024, our 5-year forecast did not look good. We had deficit spending, meaning our expenditures were exceeding our revenues. We had a very small fund balance that was positive in 2024, and we had negative fund balances from 2025, 26, 27, and 28. So because of that, having at least 3 years of deficit spending and at least 3 years of a projected negative fund balance, we were placed on fiscal oversight. We were placed on the first level, which is caution. So every year, multiple times a year now, Mr. Reibelin, myself, and the board have to submit to the state of Ohio our new reduction plan. So we were given the opportunity to cut our expenditures in order to have those positive fund balances. So I'm going to go into where we're kind of at with our reduction plans. But first, one more thing with the fiscal oversight. So with the fiscal oversight, it involves us coming up with a reduction fiscal plan, redoing our 5-year forecast, and then having monthly meetings with ODEW. They're usually about 3 meetings a month to make sure every month is aligning with our forecast, that we're not increasing our purchase services or our salaries, that everything is aligned. In addition to being under fiscal oversight, we had to undergo a performance audit with the state auditors, where they did an evaluation of all of our operations and were providing suggestions on maybe some expenditure reductions.
All right, so I'm going to first start out with expenditures. So what are expenditures for a district? And the reason why I'm starting out with expenditures is because the district has more control over those. They have more control. So what are the components that make up our expenditures? First are your supplies. Those are kind of like your consumables. That might be your classroom supplies. That would be like our fuel for our buses, our fuel for our trucks. Those are items that are kind of used up in 1 year. Next is our capital outlay. So capital outlay are usually things that have a life of 3 years or more. Now, something that's really good, though, is our capital outlay is at 0. And the reason why that is the case is because we have a permanent improvement fund that is only allowed to be used for capital and equipment and supplies that support that to give it more longevity. The next is our purchase services. So purchase services would be maybe our tuition that we have to pay for maybe some students in special education to follow their IEP. This is our utilities bills. This is our curriculum. A lot of our curriculum vendors are out of here. So that's some of our purchase services. Our salaries and benefits. These are our salaries of our staff, and then our benefits. Our benefits are comprised of our medical, our dental, our Medicare, workman's compensation, STRS, SERS, and then if we have employees that are retiring, that's where their severance would come out of. And then we have sometimes some transfers and advances. They're very minimal. Sometimes the district has to offset some of the athletics costs because it's not feasible for them to bring in the money to cover it, so sometimes we have some transfers out of our expenditures. So what did the district do in terms of expenditures once we were labeled in fiscal oversight and we kind of saw, the writing on the wall of our negative fund balance? There was 2 phases. The first phase occurred after that May 2024 5-year forecast came in. It was the summer of staff reductions. Most work were able to be achieved through retirements. Even though we had staff that were maybe riffed and they were all called back, but they already found other jobs. So some of that is done through staff reductions. We also did a comparative analytics study looking at our staff and student enrollment, our live birth study, where we're able to say, okay, in FY25, these are the births that occurred, and then we were able to make a prediction on how many of those students will be attending Ravenna schools. So we conducted that study. We've been working with OFCC on the assessments of our buildings and the usability and the enrollment capacity of our buildings. We went through every supply purchase order, every purchase service purchase order, and vetted them all for their usage, their valuability with the staff. We worked with vendors on decreasing the amounts. So these are steps that the district conducted in order to decrease their expenditures. So let's see what that did. So this is kind of interesting. Can I go over here and just talk over here for a second? So I wanted to show you in May of 2024, we did our 5-year forecast. This is what our expenditures were going to be. This is $30 million. Okay?
They can't hear you on
Oh,
YouTube.
okay. Thanks.
Watch out, this might be a little loud.
Okay. Oh, that's very loud. So right there in May of 2024, when we had that 5-year forecast, that was our expenditures. Right there. Now, as I'm doing my draft right now, we're down to 29 million, which is a difference of a savings of 1.131. Well, that kind of maybe seems low because we, had some reductions in our expenditures, but it's a prorated amount. For every teacher that retired, their last pay is August 20th. So we didn't get the full benefit of 24 pays. It was 20 pays. And we also had to pay out severance. So you didn't see the full effect of those first reductions. So now let's go to FY26. We were supposed to have $31 million in expenditures. We're predicted right now to be at 27 million. That's a savings of 4 million. So you see how we're getting those in savings and expenditures. We went from saving 1.1 million to 4 million, 4.9 million, and 5.2 million. It's a compounded effect. Okay, that's a lot of expenditure reductions. But the expenditure reductions are not meeting up with our revenue that's coming in. So let's go back to May 2024. Without having any of these reductions, what was going to be our fund balance? This year it's going to be negative 2.6 million. FY26, negative 7 million. FY27, negative 12 million. And FY28, negative 19 million. That was what we were looking at in May of 2024 before we did any of these reductions. So we had phase 1 that occurred in the summer, and now we're working on phase 2, which majority of that is going to be in our April forecast that I'm going to share with you, but it's still a draft, as I said. All right, so we talked about expenditures. Let's talk about revenue. What is our revenue? What comes into the state? So we get property tax collections. Income tax, some districts do income tax. It's usually saved for like more rural districts. It's also another tax that has to be voted on by the community, and it doesn't really fare well. The next is our state funding, our fair school funding, and this is the governor's budget. And then we have some minimal other funding sources. Those are kind of, we'll get Medicaid settlements coming in. We have some tax abatements. You're familiar that we rent Tappan out to EA, so it's kind of the very minimal income for the district. All right, so let's look at how our revenue is broken up. This is based upon November 2024 5-year forecast. Okay, 50% is coming in from the governor's office, but 43.5% is coming in from tax collections on property. That could be class 1 or class 2, business, residential. We got some minor ones. You got a green one here of 4.49%. That's that Homestead Act, that's that rollback. So they give a reduction to property owners, but then the state pays the districts. It's that 10% rollback credit and 2.5% owner-occupied credit. Then we have some other little ones here that are very small, what I said, that your tax abatement payments and your Medicare payments. This configuration is different between districts. Like, for example, Aurora Schools only gets 10% from the state, and they have to rely almost 90% from their taxpayers in order to fund their districts. Akron Schools is the opposite. They're like a little over 70% in government funding, and then they get about 30% in their taxpayers. But as the blue decreases, the governor is seeking for communities to do more of an ask, districts to do more of an ask from their community. That is what the name of the game is right now. All right, so let's talk about taxes. So these are our property taxes. So if you notice up there, let's look at the first one up there. 1976, a levy was passed for operational. It was passed at 28.8 millage. We only collect 7 mills. So what does that mean? Regardless of the property values increase, I'm thinking that everyone's houses increased from 1976. So we don't collect on that new value. It's a set collection amount that's brought in. That value never changes, regardless of the property taxes going up. So you can see there, we've had millages that are very high, but we're collecting at a lower rate. And the district has not received any new money since 2005. Now, as I mentioned before, we're very fortunate that we do have that PI funds that were voted on by the community, but those cannot be used for operational. They only can be used to support buildings and items that have a 3-year or more usage, capital equipment. All right. So let's talk about the reappraisals. So everyone got the reappraisals. Reappraisals does not impact that screen prior because we can never change the values of what's collected in those levies. What did change? Our inside millage. So every school district, every community gets 10 inside mills that they share with police, fire, library, and the city. We collect 4.6 mills on that. So that is the only thing that changed. This was the impact from their reappraisals. We are receiving $399,000, that doesn't sound right, $399,825 in a calendar year. But for FY25, for the purpose of our 5-year forecast and our operations, because remember, school districts' calendar is July 1st to June 30th, we only collected $199,912. Okay. Apologize that this is small. So now we're talking about what do we get from the governor's office? What do we get from the state of Ohio? And it used to be called school foundation payments, and then they changed that in 2020 to the Fair School Funding Act. So right here we get like restricted funds and unrestricted funds, and they're kind of like different categories, and they're all based on the formula that is used at the governor's office is based upon enrollment and the wealth of the district, and they determine that. So they get our enrollment, and then they determine the wealth of the district based upon that, and that's how they determine our funding. So like I said, you have two different categories. You have your unrestricted, which is kind of like your casino tax. You get your kind of like your base funding. You have your restricted, and restricted means that we're given funding, but it has to be used for a certain purpose, like science of reading, or gifted, or career and tech education. So it's specific on the usage of those funds. All right, so in February of 2025, we're in a biennium year, so every 2 years the governor will bring out his budget. The governor's budget was released. And it came with phase-in staying the same, that's good, but base cost was decreased. Normally we get every 2 years, a 4% increase. That was reduced to 0%. And then our guaranteed funding is taking a hit of 5% for FY 26, and then 27, 28, and 29, 10%. So that was the governor's budget that came out in February. This past couple of weeks, the House now takes and meets, and then they create their version of the budget, their amendments. Then the Senate will meet at the end of April, beginning of May, and they'll provide all these scenarios, their amendments, their suggestions to the governor. Then there are going to be closed sessions from May, which we're not going to get any information, and then the governor will make his decision on what will be the budget at the end of June, by June 30th, which it always is like the last week, June 30th of 2025. So there's many different scenarios. Depending upon your district, the scenarios, something that may not impact us may impact another district, these variables. So we won't really know how the governor's budget is going to impact us until we get all the scenarios. But that's why I'm saying everything here today is a draft. I will always amend the draft if I get more additional information. So what are we doing to advocate for fair school funding for public school districts? All of our information that I do, I send up snippets to, we have an advocacy group that works with our representatives in the area. Portage County treasurers are all meeting this coming Friday to figure out a time where we can maybe have another community meeting and invite our representatives from the area. There's also been hearings, Senate hearings, testimonials from our advocates on behalf of fair school funding and restoring the funding for public school districts. All right, so what does this look like? So this is the impact to Ravenna School District if the governor's budget goes through. And these are compounded, okay? So these are the yearly reductions, but they're compounded. So in FY 26, we're looking at $641,000 reduction. FY 27, $1.278 million reduction. FY 28, $1.271 million reduction. And FY 29, $1.272 million reduction. And these reductions occur each year, and then they're compounded. They're carried over from year to year. Again, this is the data that I have today, March 18th, and it's based upon the governor's budget. All right, so let's look at some scenarios. So I talked about expenditures, I talked about revenue. I'm actually going to go over here, Rick. So I did 4 scenarios for our April 5 forecast based upon... Is it good? Okay, so I have 4 scenarios. Right here in the green is our 5-year forecast with the reappraisals and with our reduction financial plan. This is no governor's changes, no levy, right there. Right here is our 5-year forecast with the reappraisals, our financial reduction plan, but the governor's budget. So you see where we fall right in the line, we kind of fall off now that we're at this negative spending. We cannot certify, if we have negative fund balance, we cannot certify our expenditures. We can't certify our payroll, we can't certify anything if we end a year negative. All right, let's look at this one. The blue one up top, we're going to have no reductions. That's not going to happen. But that's, the blue ones up top is a levy pass, the levy that we have on the ballot in May. It's a 2.75 million collection each year. It's the reappraisals, it's the reduction financial plan, but no governor's changes in funding. And then this line right here is the governor's budget, reappraisals, reduction financial plan, and the passage of a levy. And again, my little disclaimers, this is only good as of today, and all of our scenarios and our whatever the 5-year forecast that we're going to be doing in April needs to be board approved in April. All right, so let's see what's up next on the timeline. April 15th, we have a board work session where we'll go over our 5-year forecast, do our new reduction plan as mandated by the state of Ohio, ODEW. In May, we had the levy up on the ballot. The amount was reduced. Remember in November, it was at 3.25 million, but we were kind of calculating and predicting what the reappraisals were going to come in. So we just felt that we wanted to take that into account with the levy ask of the 2.75 million to take into account that 400,000 in reappraisals. Okay, and then in June, we're going to have the signed governor's budget, and then in July, I'm going to redo the whole forecast again based upon the information that now I have. All right, so we went over our 5-year forecast, our fiscal oversight, our expenditure data, and our revenue data. And that is it for me. Slide 14 is completed. So it's good stuff, these numbers, huh? I literally have not slept. Like I feel like all weekend I keep thinking of different scenarios and to try to make this as community friendly and understandable to everybody. Just our financial operations. So that's it. Oh, you don't have to. Kind of like.
Thank you, Kristen. It isn't too often that we're able to say we have one of our own. It's an honor for me to celebrate and to welcome our superintendent. Like I said, many districts aren't able to say what we're able to say. The superintendent is one of our own locals. Ben Reiblin has spent his entire career from being a student here to being the superintendent of our district. Ben has held, and I'll just share this, many different titles and key roles. Before becoming superintendent, he was the assistant superintendent. At one time, he was the director of human resources, director of teaching and learning for kindergarten through 5th graders. He has served as a principal in our district, as an assistant principal, a teacher, and a coach. And finally, we have him as our superintendent. Ben is also a proud parent of his own family children going through our district. And one of the things that I've seen in my own career, and so many of us have also seen, his leadership. Every decision that Ben has worked for and has brought about is geared toward the students' success, the staff in our Ravenna families, in our community. He strives to bring forth for himself and for the rest of us excellence. That's such a key element in Ben's life and degree. As we know, Ben's philosophy of leadership is grounded in collaboration, transparency, and continued improvement for our children. We have some of our teachers and administrators here. That's what he's geared for, working together. Some of Ben's long-term planning is that enhanced academic programming for our children, improvement for our children's achievement, cultivating a positive school culture. He's worked for that and he will continue to do that. He's deeply rooted to our community. So I can really gladly say he is a true Raven, a dedicated person to our students, to our staff, to the Ravenna School District, and to our Ravenna community. Let's welcome our own Ben Rybelin.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Kind words. All right, when I took this job this summer, I knew that we had a lot of challenges ahead. I knew that we could get through it, and I knew that we could do it together. So my goal today is to give you a little bit of our challenges and a little bit of our positive things going on, and cry to our community to band together for the success of our students. So here we go. First, I want to thank everyone for coming out. This evening is going to be about facts. We're kind of bound by state law right now to talk about facts only, and my goal is to give you facts so that you can make educated decisions and do what's best for you, your family, and your community. As Bill mentioned, I am fully involved in this district, not only as a job, but I'm a parent and a graduate, and all the decisions that I make each and every day, I think about my own kids and what I want to do to make it better for them. So, all right. The first slide is about our state report card. Obviously, this is something that we know we have work to do on. Over the last 3 years, you can see here we were a 2-star, a 2-star, and then a 2.5-star. You're going to see in the next few slides we've made some real growth. We've earned a few awards the last few weeks that I believe are going to change this report card drastically. But a couple things I want to point out. Our graduation rate has been above 90% for the last 3 years, which we're really proud of. We've made continuous gains on our achievement, on our progress, and our gap closing. And I think you'll see in the next couple slides that I think it's going to make a real difference. So my theme here is through tough times comes good things, and I wanted to point out a couple of awards that we recently received. We found out late last week that West Main is receiving a Governor's Award for Science of Reading recognition. They're only one of 47 schools statewide to receive this prestigious designation, and that is due to our new reading series and the commitment that the teachers have made, not just at West Main, throughout the district, but West Main did a great job of following through on this, and it's a real high honor for them. Ravenna High School and Brown Middle School received the PBIS Bronze Award from the state this year. That is on PBIS's positive behavior intervention supports. It's related to discipline and how we handle students, and the rewards and things that we do to promote attendance and behavior. They're also, we just received a letter 2 weeks ago from the state that they're both exiting out of what's called additional targeted support and improvement. So based on your scores above or below a cut score on the state testing, they've had 2 consecutive years of improvement on the cut score, which, as I mentioned earlier, I think that's really going to help our gap closing and our progress. RHS also received the Ohio Momentum Award this year. That's awarded to buildings that improve their performance index on the state report card by 3 or more points, and they also received a value-added rating of 4 or more stars. So there was a very small list of about 30 schools throughout the state, and they were one of them to receive that Ohio Momentum Award. Oops. Our Ravenna Preschool earned a gold star this year. It used to be formerly the 5-star ratings. They've received this several years in a row for excellence. They've done a great job preparing our students. I wanted to give a little stat, though. Only about 30% of our students going to kindergarten attend preschool. Ironically, 30% of our students that enter kindergarten are kindergarten ready. They take a test called the KRA, and they want that goal to be around 80% of your students entering kindergarten ready. And we only have about 30%, and I think that's a testament to the kids that go to preschool. But I also want to point out that we have some ground to gain when they come to us, if we only have 30% of our students kindergarten ready. At Williard, during the last school year, they moved over 30% of their students to on-level in reading. This is the highest rating they've had, or highest growth they've had in 5 years. And that, too, is attributed to our new reading program called Amplify, which we've been really impressed with and have seen great gains at all the levels. West Park this year has 100 less discipline referrals. That's related to their PBIS work at this point in the year. And they, too, have seen their highest gains on reading scores in the last few years, also attributed not only to the reading series, but the interventions that they've also put in place. Some other things that we are really proud of, our career tech program we're expanding and working on. We're looking at expanding into a robotics program for our students. We do have some job share programs. I know East Manufacturing and Mac LTT have been great partners. In fact, I heard last week that one of our students has accepted a job down there as a job share program, making good money, earning job skills, as well as earning credit for school. Career-based interventions, or CBI, this is the old OWE program. We have reinstated this at the high school in the last 2 years. We went from 5 students to over 30 students this year. It's, again, a job share program, and as we look at preparing students to move on after high school, it's not just about going to college, but as well as preparing them should they choose to go into the job sector. College Credit Plus is an opportunity that all of our students have. This is where students are able to take credit, either dual credit or individual credit through universities. It's great for our students, especially since we have a high poverty rate. A lot of these students are leaving with college credit as they enter into college. Some even entering as sophomores, and in the last 2 years we've had 2 enter as juniors because they had so many credits going into college. And for those who are looking for longer term plans than just a 4-year program, this really helps them financially to be prepared. We've got an excellent student service department. They handle all of our IEPs in the district. We're at about 25% special ed, which is a quarter of our students have some type of disability, learning disability. That's double the state average. And in order to be able to take care of those students appropriately, that takes resources and that takes money. So I want to commend Mrs. Haynes for her work with our department and the work of our teachers to make sure that they're meeting the needs of our students. We do have one-to-one Chromebooks for all of our students with a technology plan that goes out so that Mr. Newcomb and his department are replenishing those as they go out of service. He's had that plan in place, and it's been very productive and very lucrative for our students to have that technology in hand to be able to prepare them. And we offer many different current athletic and extracurricular activities. We want to try and maintain those as best as possible. I do know that a lot of districts in the area offer pay-to-play for many sports activities. We do not right now. Certainly something that we are analyzing and considering as we move forward. So with those good things come some challenges. We want to maintain a quality education for all our students. We want to offer a variety of programs for all of our students and families, and we want to provide opportunities for all students and families. So that's going to take some work, and I wanted to talk about, and this kind of rolls over with what Mrs. Plageman talked about in her report. It's a moving target right now for us that we're trying to locate. We've worked tirelessly to try and shave our deficit, as she showed you the reductions. We've reduced spending, and we have worked on a plan to come out of fiscal oversight. We meet with ODE regularly. She mentioned 3 meetings a month. We are online showing our expenditures and making sure that we are in line with everything we do. But since then, she talked about the governor's budget. Those variables have kind of changed things. We're going to continue to try and make the necessary changes to find that target wherever it may be. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do moving forward. We've tried to stay as proactive as we can as opposed to being reactive, although we're kind of at a point where Sometimes it is reactive. I will tell you that last night at the board meeting, the Board of Education accepted an agreement with all three of our unions. They've graciously agreed to take a 0% increase for next year. That will transfer to all employees, including our administrators, next year to buy us a year as we work through this plan. We do have a consolidation plan with some of our buildings, which we are going to talk about in the next few slides. We have reduced staffing over the last couple of years, and we're going to continue to do that as we come in line with our needs as well as our student population. We've renegotiated several contracts with support services, and with those I mean our nursing services, our mental health services, our occupational therapists, our physical therapists that we have that come in to work with our students, especially with those on IEPs. And then this last thing I wanted to talk about briefly, one of the questions that came in online this week was that why did we wait so long to ask for money? And I would argue that we have not waited. This is our 5th attempt on the levy. We had 2 in May and November of 2023. We had 1 in March and November 24, and now May of 25. So let's talk about plans. When I took this position and Kristen and I sat down and met, we decided from the get-go that we wanted to make sure that we had plans in place for everything. And not just a plan for this year or a plan for the next couple months, a long-term plan for the next few years. So she's been working diligently, as you saw in the 5-year forecast, to have that financial plan ready. I'm working with Mr. Kendrick as well as the principals about a building and grounds plan that we'll talk about in a few minutes along with the consolidation. I've tasked Mr. Smith to give us a curriculum plan where we'll be reviewing each of the grade levels as well as subjects each year. So if we review math this year, we would review math again in 7 years, and there'll be a rotation each year that we're looking at our curriculum, our growth. We meet quarterly with our district leadership team to talk about data, but this is be a more in-depth thing about how our curriculum is impacting our learning. And so we'll have that in place by the end of the year. We have a staffing plan that we meet about almost daily. We sit and review to see where we can move people, reduce positions. I will say that we are human and have hearts, and we want to make sure that we are not eliminating jobs for people. So if we can do that through attrition or through the closure of a building so that we can reduce staff, we're doing that. And then I've asked Mr. Lenardi to begin a long-term athletic plan. He began this in the spring of last year, working with his coaches, meeting more regularly, so that as a former athlete and former coach here, I want to see our Ravens succeeding on the playing field or on the court, and we need to do a better job internally of preparing those teams long-term, not just waiting for them to get to the high school. All right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. We are closing West Park at the end of the school year. That was voted on by the Board of Education. This is after a long, drawn-out plan. We had people from the ESC come in and give us data that they saw, so it was a second set of eyes than just us. I will tell you that West Park is operating at about 50% capacity this year. They only have about 125 or 130 students there. It's just not feasible to continue to run our buildings at 50% capacity. So we do have a plan. Our kindergarten students and teachers will be moving to Williard next year. It will be K-1-2 for the entire school year next year. There was a question about what we're doing with West Park. There is Ohio Revised Code that we have to follow to be sold or leased through an auction. We have to have an appraiser come in, which they're working on currently, and then once that appraisal is done, we would open up the auction according to Ohio Revised Code. And the plan is we will sell it. We are also looking at closing another building next year. Our enrollment just does not necessitate us keeping this many buildings open with the rising costs of utilities and everything that we're trying to do to keep those buildings open. The other thing that we need to talk about is most of our buildings were built in the 50s, and they are, as well as we've tried to take care of them and keep up on them, they are aging, and they were not built for what we need them for now. So at the end of this year, we'll start looking, regardless of what happens in the spring with the budget or levy or anything else, and make an assessment about closing another building next year. Mrs. Plageman also talked about the Ohio Facilities Commission. This building, beautiful building that we're in, was built about 15 years ago through the Ohio Facilities Commission. If you remember, 53% of that portion was paid for by the Ohio Facilities Commission, and then the remaining portion was paid for through the local bond issue. We are near the top of the list and eligible for another building, and I know that sounds crazy in a financial crisis, but it's separate funding, and we're looking at potential funding so that we can update our buildings and hopefully at a low or no cost to our voters. So we are exploring those options. They come in for free and analyze your buildings and look at the usage and the quality of the buildings and give you some assessments. That doesn't mean we're building in a year, but I will tell you that will be part of our long-term plan so that we can find a way to use our buildings more appropriately. One of the other questions that came up was about busing. In Ohio, the state minimum for school busing requires districts to transport students in grades K through 8 who live more than 2 miles from their school. That's the minimum, but not necessarily high school students. So this year we elected to eliminate 9 through 12 busing except for students on IEPs that were eligible based on their needs to ride those buses. We're still busing our K through 8 students who live more than half a mile from the school. So we are not quite at state minimums yet. I would love to say we were going to reinstate this, but obviously with the ever-changing target, it will depend on everything that happens here in the spring. All right, as for staffing, we have 12 retirements already docked for the end of the year. We will try and limit replacing each one of those. There are a couple that are necessities that we can't not replace, but the goal is to try and not replace a lot of those teachers and or support staff and cut through attrition. That just means as people retire or leave, we wouldn't be filling those positions. With the closure of West Park, we're going to be eliminating several positions, an administrator, a secretary position, a couple custodian positions, and at least one food service position. And right now, we're assessing our staffing plans. There could be a rift depending on the outlook, but the goal is that we don't have to get to that point if we can through attrition as people leave and not fill those positions. We have eliminated almost 30 positions over the last 3 years, so it's a large number, but I will tell you that our enrollment's down about 40% over the last 15 years here in Ravenna, which is pretty drastic, which kind of lends to why our staffing is reducing and lends to why our building closures are happening. So finally, what can you do? I encourage you to get the word out to your friends and family. You've heard the facts here today. Ask questions. We're always available. I have an open door at the board office. Call, email. We'll do our best. If we don't know the answer, we will certainly find the answer and get back to you. Stay informed. I know that the Friends of Ravenna Committee have a couple more things coming up in the future. I encourage you to invite friends to get out and ask questions and hear what they have to say. Finally, I encourage you to contact your state Congress. Dave Joyce is your state representative here in the 14th District, and Christina Rogner about the current budget proposals and how it's affecting not only Ravenna but all public schools. The initial budget looks like public schools will be taking a cut of about an average of 8% per district, which is pretty high. And they're going to have some volunteer signups at the end here. If you're more than willing to be a part of this, we encourage you to sign up for those volunteer opportunities. So that's all I got. I know there's a couple questions that came in. Are they something that you can answer, or do I need to? I can take it. Okay, the question is, with 25% of students on IEPs, what's the plan if the federal government takes away Title I funds? We're still legally bound by the IDEA Act to provide those services. So special ed is different than Title I, and currently they're not saying we're going to lose those funds. We're kind of at a wait and see. I do not expect our special ed funds to disappear, so hopefully that answers our question. Were there any others that came in? Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Ben and Kristen. To all of us here, we've heard our story. We've heard our story of academics, where we are. We've heard the finances explained to us. And basically, I say to all of us, we need you, we need all of us to be part of us to pass this levy on May 6th. So thank you for being here, and please pass this information on. You are the persons here. Other people need to hear this story. Please pass it on for the success of our district and for the success of our students.
We'd like to open it up at this time for any questions that you may have from the audience. I know there was one already that Ben answered, so thank you, Ben. But we'd be happy to entertain any additional questions. We also have John Kennedy here with us, Portage County Treasurer. If you have any questions on property taxes, he'd be more than happy to answer those as well. And I know, John, you're willing to stick around after our meeting too, so if you'd rather have a private conversation. But if there's any questions from the audience, we'll take those now. Yes.
Hello, I'm Eric Mitchell from the Community. I actually have a question on behalf of some of the residents of Ravenna who are concerned that, hello. I'm Aaron Mitchell from the Beloved Community, and I'm actually asking a question on behalf of some of the residents who are concerned on how the funding will be spent once and if it is obtained. They have a concern that in the past it's been property taxes increasing and their home values have been decreasing. And some of them don't have children in the school systems anymore. And they're asking what is their reason for supporting this levy. And how can this levy assist them in their current situation or state? Some of them are senior citizens, some of them don't have children, others are retirees.
Kristen, do you want to answer the funding question?
Well, yes. So, yes, it is. So as I explained in my presentation, the district hasn't had any new revenue since 2005. The district has done an excessive amount of expenditure reductions, but unless we get new revenue money, we're going to be at a deficit, increased deficit spending and a negative fund balance. If we have a negative fund balance, we'll go up to fiscal emergency. We will have the state will come in and take over. They will tell us if we're running athletics. They'll tell us what curriculum that we're buying. They'll tell us what courses we're teaching. They can sit there and say, you know, high school, you're out in 5 periods. You know, I mean, I was at Parma City Schools and we went through that. You know, it was my first year as a teacher and we went to 5 periods a day. So those are the things that will happen. We have to have a positive fund balance. And one thing that I wanted to say is that, you know, like the school district calendar starts from July 1st to June 30th. We don't walk in July 1st and have all of our money. We get our state foundation payments twice a month, and we don't get that property tax payment until like September. So that's like really concerning. And then we get our other load of our tax settlement payments in like February. That's our second half. There are times that we are so close to being at a negative and when we're doing our check registry. So we need that 60 days. We need some of that reserve money in order for us to make sure that we're not in that situation. But I do financial reports every month. Everything's on the district website. I present them at every board meeting. It's being fiscally responsible, but as Bill and them said, I was a teacher. I mean, that's how I started my career. It's making sure that we're paying our employees. When I started my first year at Parma, we had a base and step freeze. I had 3 children, and I was making like $40,000 with 3 kids. So I get it. We've got to make sure we're taking care of our employees. We've got to make sure that we're taking care of our kids. So that's the best I can answer.
I'm John Kennedy, your Portage County Treasurer. I appreciate the question. I hear complaints from our seniors. I've heard it for the last year and a half, and it's legit. This is a question, and I'm not trying to kick the can down the road here, but it's our state lawmakers who could fix this problem. And there's 2 things related to property taxes that obviously need to get fixed. First of all, let's take care of our seniors first, right? They could do that immediately. They could do that in the next week if it was the highest priority, which I'm not sure that it is, but it should be. And they could do it via the Homestead Exemption Act. They could amend it tomorrow and say, we're going to double the benefit from $25,000 to $50,000 in terms of reducing the taxable valuation of your home. Meaning, if your house is valued at $100,000, it's now going to be valued at $50,000, which in turn would mean your property taxes would be reduced significantly. Your property taxes would be reduced significantly if you're a senior 65 and older. Second thing you could do about Homestead, which they could do tomorrow, is raise the income eligibility from $40,000 to $75,000, right? You could do that tomorrow. Those 2 things would fix the problem for the majority of our seniors, and you wouldn't get that question anymore from our seniors about, what am I getting from this? I've been putting in money over the decades to pay for public schools, right? They need a break. So that problem goes away. The second thing that state lawmakers could do in the next month, I would say, they've had a long time to deal with this, is the unconstitutional way that public schools are currently financed. You know, there was a couple, that needs to happen. That hasn't happened, and what have they done? They've kicked the can for 30 years practically, right? And so it is still deemed unconstitutional the way that public schools are financed in the state of Ohio. And that is a shame. So our state lawmakers can fix this problem. This should not be on Ravenna or other districts like Ravenna to try to fix this problem on their own. It shouldn't have to be done via levies. It shouldn't. There's got to be a way that we can fix this problem at its core so you don't end up with always on the ask. You saw, this is number 5, attempt number 5. At a reduced millage. At a reduced millage. And hopefully in May this will pass. But it shouldn't be this difficult to support public schools in the state of Ohio. And here's one other final thing. There's $1 billion right now that is being taken away from public schools and diverted where? To private schools. To vouchers. And they say, well, the money should follow the student. No, it shouldn't. When you make the choice to go to private, that is your choice. That is your choice to do it. And you should pay for that choice. The public money, $1 billion is being diverted into private. If you had that $1 billion available today, guess what? Ravenna doesn't go into financial distress. Ravenna doesn't have to ask for another 2.4 million or whatever it was that was up there. You don't have to do that. That problem goes away. So, what's the solution? In my book, lobbying our state lawmakers to step up and do the right thing.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Kristen. Any other questions from the audience? Rob?
Hi, this is a question for the treasurer, and it's really, I'm trying to figure out if I'm reading your chart correctly. But where you showed all those trends, I think it was a brown line that indicated the governor's budget and our levy. But in 5 years, unless I'm reading this wrong, we're right back where we are right now. Is that not the case?
Are you referring to with the governor's budget and a levy being passed? So that would be, we only do a 5-year forecast for, 5 years. So then we would, it's an emergency levy, so then we would ask for a renewal. A district would ask for renewal in 5 years, where the amount, again, doesn't increase if your property values, it would just still be the same collection amount. But we can't put in a 5-year forecast any renewals, because those are not approved yet. No, and as Mr. Rybland explained, there's also going to have to be some more operation reductions. If we're planning on closing another building, that is another compounded reduction of about $400,000 a year. And then when you sell it, then that money goes back into the PI fund in order for the maintaining of the other buildings. And then, as Mr. Rybland indicated, we are working with OFCC on even proposals on even going down to lower buildings, but newer buildings, where we would use PI money to pay the portion of the communities as opposed to asking the community for the money. So there's got to be a combination. It's constantly looking at our expenditures and our revenue sources.
That's okay.
You should never have given me the microphone. I'm sorry. What's the big problem with Ravenna? What did Ben talk about? Enrollment, right? Enrollment continues to decline. Well, how do you raise enrollment? You make this an excellent school. Why do people move to a community? What's the first thing that a young family or a family looks at when they're evaluating where they want to move? The public school, right? And if the public school doesn't look like, my kids, well, how would they do in Ravenna? Would this be a place where I could see my kids being successful? What's the outcome of moving into Ravenna or an adjacent area, right? You're not going to move because you're going to see that the school is in financial distress and that it's not putting out a quality product. My kid is not going to succeed there. How do we change that? We all have agency in the success of not just Ravenna Public Schools, but in Ravenna. Ravenna has become a very transitory place for folks. People come here, they transact county business, and then they leave, right? So how do we get back to, I want to live in Ravenna. I want my family to live in Ravenna. We got to raise the stature and the output and the outcomes, successful outcomes of the public school here in Ravenna. We have got to, the economic future of Ravenna is the economic future of Ravenna Public Schools. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And the sooner that folks who live here see that to be a truism, the sooner that it will be seen as a place where I want to send my kids to Ravenna because they're going to get a top-notch education, and I can live. The cost of living is low, but it's an excellent school. I'm going to send my kids there. How do we get there, right? We all have agency in that. That's what we want to see. But as the public school goes in Ravenna, so goes Ravenna economically speaking. So you gotta, if we want Ravenna to be a place that is attractive to young families, we gotta not just save Ravenna, we've gotta make it an excellent school again, right? And it can be. It can be. It's up to all of us, and most importantly, the people who are not here tonight, actually. Right? And all the families who are looking at, where could I live in northeastern Ohio and give my kids a shot at being successful in the future? That's what it's going to take. It's not just about what you heard tonight. It's about the big picture, too. It's all connected. And that's a big ask, I know, but as Ravenna Public School goes, so goes Ravenna.
Hi, my name is Julianne. I have 3 kids in the district, so I have 2 questions. One was about community. How do we get the community and expand our growing numbers? Because I look at other communities around the area where they're building new housing developments. They're building more places for kids to live in, but Ravenna itself and Ravenna Township, unless I'm not seeing something, doesn't have that growth. So how do we improve that to make the community more stronger for our school district that we're living in right now? And number 2, Ben, I think you kind of briefly talked about it, but classroom sizes. My 4th grader right now has 24 kids in the classroom. There's other ones that have 27. How do we fix that problem moving forward, even though we're having that decline of enrollment, making sure that my kid gets the attention that he needs, especially since he's on my younger kid who has ADHD that needs that more in-depth learning.
Is this on? Okay. All right, thank you for asking that. Number 1, I'll talk about class size first, I guess. We try and limit those classroom sizes. 24 is not an unheard of number. We are not reducing a ton of our staff at this point, teaching-wise, because we are pretty lean right now. So I don't foresee those numbers going up next year and continuing as we work through. Even though we're closing a building, we're still going to have the amount of teachers that we have. A lot of our class size as a whole is hovering around 130 or 140. So we're going to take that appropriately and split it up. We do take some of those special ed numbers, and those will have some lower numbers, obviously, based on the requirements. I don't foresee those numbers going up classroom size-wise. The second question, what's that? Oh, community. That's a great question. I think John talked about it a little bit, and I think that it's a whole group effort. Our schools are going to get better. Our community is going to expand. If our rec department is doing great, our athletics and our participation in other events are going to expand. It's not just a school problem, although we're part of it, that we need to be involved in. We do have a new development being added. We just received something from Ravenna Township that more homes are going to be built off of, was that Forest Ridge? Forest Ridge off of Summit and Lakewood there. the city doesn't have a lot of room to expand for building. I mean, most of the buildable houses or lots in the city are already occupied. Is that correct, Rob? There's not a lot to expand on. So it's a partnership with all of us. It's a partnership with the city and the township. It's a partnership with the rec department that we all have to be involved to try and encourage people to come here. We have to do better, and we have to make people want to be here. It's a challenge every single day. Every day that I wake up and every time I go to bed, that's all I'm thinking about is what can we do differently to make this place a better place. Certainly our academics need to improve, our athletics, and we're going to continue to work on that through our long-term plan.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay. Just later, if you wanted to touch base with me on your specific situation with your child, we can chat about that. But I just wanted to add a little bit to what he was saying about special education. I don't think maybe a lot of people are aware on Ohio Revised Code and like with multiple disabilities units that there are caps on the number of children you can have in a room. So if you walk by a multiple disabilities classroom and you only see 7 or 8 kids, that's because that's all you're allowed to have in that room due to their disability. The same goes for a resource room, that's 10, a behavior unit, that's 10. So we can't go over those numbers. We're not allowed to go over those numbers, and you have to have at least one paraprofessional. We're required by law to meet those caseloads. If we go over, it's not compliant, and there's a whole other set of problems that we don't want. There's another piece to it that I think a lot of the community isn't aware of, and that is that Happy Day is not open anymore. So the kids that used to be at Happy Day school are now in our buildings. So if you look at medically fragile children that have G-tube feeds, that have Hoyer lift diaper changing, those kids are in our buildings. So my paraprofessionals and my teachers are doing jobs that used to be reserved for nurses. And I think it's really important that they have been asked to do more and more and more and more, but we can't, and you see that 0% up there, we can't give them more, but we're asking them to do more. I just think it's really important that we notice like the way public school has changed. Those kids didn't go to public school, and now they are in our buildings fully included. It's just really important everybody understands how difficult special education is and how expensive special education is. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Thank you. I saw earlier that there were changes in, I think, therapy. I have one of the 25% children who receives PT, OT, and speech, and she has hearing aids, she signs. I'm curious what those effects are, what changes there were.
Okay, sorry, I'm awkward. So our PT-OT contract is, we contract those services out. Our speech therapists are our employees, our union employees. Mainly the big change we made with our Sendero contract, which is OT and PT, we just asked them to focus on only the therapies and not attend the meetings. We felt it was more beneficial for them to be providing the minutes and the IEPs and working in the therapy environment than to sit in a 2-hour-long IEP meeting, ETR IEP meeting. So that was the big change. There's no change to the service delivery or the minutes, because legally what's in that IEP is what that child will receive. So it was mainly just focus on the therapies and don't sit in the meetings. Was that the only? Okay.
That's a great question.
Any additional questions? Yes. Ben, down here.
My question is about busing. Now, you said you aren't busing high school kids. Does that include Biomed and possibly Maplewood?
Thank you. By law, we do have to bus our Maplewood and Biomed students. Now, we are not busing our high school Biomed students. We have one shuttle that goes from here to Maplewood, but they don't get a ride here to the high school, so they're responsible to come here, and then we shuttle out once or twice a day to Maplewood. As for our Biomed 9 through 12 students, we are not busing those students currently. We have to, yes. The question was, do we bus our private school students to St. Pat's? And the answer is yes. By law, we're required to do that.
My question is just about the nursing for next year. Jessica, you're right, we have severe special needed children in our buildings and we need to have nurses. Is that something that is still going to remain for next year?
We'll have nursing services. We're just working through those contracts right now. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you all again for coming this evening. We really appreciate your attention, your questions. Getting these facts out are so critically important, and it starts with all of us, and we really would love your yes vote on May 6th for Ravenna schools and the kids. Thank you. Have a great evening.